Hello and welcome faculty and staff members from the Apple Hill School District to this professional development session entitled Organizing Informational Text Structures. Before designing this session, I had the opportunity to review data on the third grade Ohio ELA test for the state of Ohio, the district, and each individual elementary school within the district. The data helped me to create a professional development specific to your own needs as a district and as individual schools. So let's take a closer look at this data. First up, here is the district-wide data. There are a total of 229 third grade students within this particular district, with about 62% testing at the proficient or above proficient level. The data is broken up by reading informational text, reading literary text, and writing. When looking at the percentages for reading informational text, 78% of the third graders in your district were at or near proficient or above proficient. However, about 21% of students, or 48 third graders, were below proficient. Although 21% may not seem like a large percentage, this is still a large chunk of students struggling with this concept. This next data summary shows the breakdown of student achievement across the district by content statements on the Ohio ELA test. One of the most noteworthy details is student performance on the content statement of comparing and contrasting between the most important points and key details presented in two texts on the same topic. There were two questions on the test of this same content statement, with 71% of third graders in the district incorrect on the first and 82% incorrect on the other. This is the main reason as to why it was so crucial to put a focus on providing you all with a strategy to improve student comprehension of informational pieces of text. Next, here's the data on third graders at Brayburn Elementary. Out of a total of 75 third graders, 75% scored at or near the proficient or above proficient level. For reading informational text, only 8% of third graders scored below proficient on the ELA test. This is exceptionally strong data for this particular group of students' abilities. But as we all know, even when students are succeeding at a particular topic or content statement, it is still important to present them with new ways to expand their knowledge and continue to practice those skills. At Cortland Elementary, there are a total of 89 third grade students, with only 49% scoring at or near the proficient or above proficient level. For reading informational text specifically, 28% or about 25 of these students scored below proficient. Although this percentage is not as large as the percentage of students below proficient in the writing category, it is still a good chunk of students, which is why it's important to provide the faculty and staff with strategies to hopefully improve scores in this genre of text, especially considering the content statement that so many of students in the Apple Hill School District are struggling with. The final elementary school in your district is Darcy Elementary, where there is a total of 65 students with 66% scoring at or near the proficient or above proficient level. For reading informational text, 28% or about 18 of these students scored below proficient. Given the smaller number of third graders at Darcy compared to Cortland and Brayburn, this is a rather large percentage of students scoring below proficient. It is extremely important to provide students struggling with the comprehension of informational text with the tools and strategies they need in order to improve their own abilities. Before we begin discussing the specific strategy we will be focused on today, here is a quote by Armbruster, Anderson, and Ostertag in 1989, where they cited the ideas of McGee and Richgels in 1985 as well as Piccolo from 1987. They were discussing an approach for improving student comprehension and background knowledge of expository or informational text. It reads, combine two approaches to improving student comprehension and background knowledge of expository text. The first approach being teaching readers to make concrete visual representations of the organization of ideas in a text, and the second approach being to teach children the common structures of informational text. Now, this quote will make more sense as we advance through the presentation, but I chose to include this specific quote because it highlights the focus of this professional development today. Before we begin discussing the strategy of focus, I would like for us to take a closer look at the importance and benefits of informational text. There are multiple different types of informational text, each crucially important to help improve student comprehension. As students get older and advance through upper elementary and on, the amount of time that they will spend on reading and learning from informational text across the content areas will vastly increase. Informational text is important because it supplies a reader with the information they need in order to increase their background and general knowledge. Because of this increase, it is crucial that teachers put a larger focus on reading and teaching from different pieces of informational text, especially due to its difference from the fictional pieces of text that are so common in the elementary classroom. By putting a larger focus on this specific genre, educators will be providing their students with the foundation that they need in order to be successful when learning in the content areas, especially as they continue to grow and advance through the grades. According to research conducted by Ruth and Hallie Yop, young children have limited exposure to informational text in the elementary school setting. Informational texts make up a very small proportion of read-alouds in the classroom, beginning as early as preschool and continuing through at least the third grade. A majority of young students' read-aloud experiences are overwhelmingly dominated by narrative texts. This lack of a focus on informational text can be extremely detrimental to student learning. Through informational text read-aloud experiences, students can become more familiar with different types of text structure and new ways to approach different pieces of text. When teachers read mostly narratives, students miss out on these experiences. It is also crucial for teachers to read informational texts aloud, because even if this genre of text is offered on their classroom shelves, students most likely will not take advantage of them or interact with them independently if they are not familiar with them. Before we move on, I want you all to close your eyes and think of your own classroom library. What dominates the genre of text that you provide your students with? Is it narratives and other pieces of fiction, or is it informational pieces of text? For most of you, I'm sure that the answer is narratives and fiction, which is not surprising and not something to be ashamed of. But the purpose of this professional development today is to not only provide you with strategies to improve students' informational text knowledge, but it is also to help you see how important it is to provide students with the resources they need to improve these skills. The first part of achieving improved text comprehension in students is to focus more on instructing students on the different informational text structures. In addition to increasing the amount of read-alouds of informational text, Another key element to improving student reading comprehension of this genre of text is to expose them to the different informational text structures. Research completed by Strong in 2018 concluded that informational texts are more difficult for students to comprehend than narratives. One reason children have more trouble reading content area textbooks compared to narratives is a lack of knowledge on the various ways the text is structured. Multiple researchers have concluded that an effective way to improve student comprehension of this genre of text is to teach them how to identify and use different informational text structures. These types of books can be organized in a variety of patterns and structures. So if students are not exposed to the different possible structures, then they will be less likely to comprehend the text. How do you think that this is similar or different from teaching the structure of narrative pieces of text? Do you teach text structure of narratives or informational text in your classroom? Which one do you think you focus on more? Turn to your neighbors and teams to discuss this key idea to improving student comprehension of informational text. As stated previously, there are multiple different types of informational text structures, but there are 5 basic ones that are most important to focus on in teaching of the different structures to our students. The 5 structures that we will be focusing on today include description, sequence, compare and contrast, cause and effect, and problem and solution. Although many informational texts use more than one of these text structures, it is still important for students to be able to individually identify them. Let's take a closer look at each of these individual structures. The description text structure highlights descriptive ideas about one main topic that gives the attributes, specifics, or setting information about the specific topic. The main idea of this structure is that attributes of the main topic are discussed in detail. In order to help students with identifying the text structure of a specific piece of text, it's important to provide them with resources or skills they can refer to in order to assist them. The biggest tool to teach students about for this specific skill would be to look out for signal words or phrases. These are the words or phrases that students should be looking out for as they read informational text pieces in order to determine the text structure being used. The signal words or phrases specific to description text include the phrases, for example, which was one, this particular, for instance, specifically, such as, or other phrases and words that signal the use of descriptive details about a main idea. The sequence text structure presents ideas grouped by the order the events occurred or on the basis of time. The main idea of the text being discussed through this particular structure is usually a procedure or related to history in some way. Much like a timeline, the ideas are presented in chronological order. The signal words or phrases for students to look out for when reading a piece of text of this structure include the phrases or words afterwards, later, finally, last, early, following, to begin or start with, and etc. History textbooks are often set up using the sequence structure. The cause and effect structure presents cause and effect like relations between more than one idea. The main idea of the text is organized into cause and effect parts. For example, in explanations, the main idea is the effect and the explanation is its cause. The signal words or phrases for texts of this structure may include as a result, because, since, for the purpose of, caused, led to, consequence, had an effect on, etc. Compare and contrast structured texts, relate ideas on their differences and similarities. The main idea of these texts is organized into parts, which provide a comparison and contrast or alternative perspective on a particular topic. Signal phrases and or words may include not everyone, but, in contrast, all but, instead, act like, however, in comparison, on the other hand, whereas, in opposition, and etc. The final text structure to be focused on with elementary age students is problem and solution. In this type of text, the main ideas are organized into two parts, a problem and a solution that responds to the problem by attempting to eliminate it, or a question and an answer responding to the question by attempting to answer it. There are two separate signal word or phrase categories for this specific type of text structure: problem signals and solution signals. For the problem signals category, the words and phrases may include problem, question, puzzle, perplexity, enigma, riddle, issue, etc. For the solution category, the words and phrases may include solution, answer, response, reply, rejoinder, return, come back, to satisfy the problem, and etc. Now, after taking a close look at the 5 basic informational text structures, I want you all to start thinking about your own individual classrooms. For your particular group of students, what do you think would be the best way to teach them about these different text structures? As teachers, we all know that each group of students is unique, which is why it is very important for as we go through the remainder of this session, you all are constantly thinking about how you would teach this information to your particular class of students. The second part of the strategy being focused on in this professional development session is one that most teachers are rather familiar with: graphic organizers. However, there are a few additional pieces to graphic organizers that we will be discussing today that some teachers aren't used to or haven't heard about before. Most teachers know that graphic organizers are great for use in the elementary classroom because they help students to better understand how main ideas in text are organized or related to others. This is part of the reason I chose to have this as a strategy of focus today. One of the aspects of summarizing informational text that students struggled with the most, according to the Apple Hill School District's test data, was on comparing and contrasting main ideas and details from two separate pieces of text. Graphic organizers are a great resource to use in order to help students practice this skill and improve their abilities with summarizing informational text. Additionally, graphic organizers also provide educators with a way to infuse variety and excitement into the more traditional read and discuss format of instruction. By changing up the common teaching strategy that students may be used to, they will be more engaged and excited to learn. Now, this specific researcher, Shirley Ermis, conducted research on the use and benefit of graphic organizers in the elementary classroom in 2008. She found that the students in her experimental group, or the students who were instructed with the use of graphic organizers, whom scored less than 50% on the pretests, gained an average of 53% after instruction, while students in the control group who were not instructed with graphic organizers, whom scored less than 50% on the pretests, only gained an average of 44% on the post-tests. In other words, the students who benefited the most from the use of graphic organizers in this specific study were students who scored the lowest on pre-assessments. These post-test scores from her study show that students gained more knowledge and vocabulary when the information they were gaining through reading informational text was organized visually on graphic organizers. This is a crucial piece of data for this specific group of educators and staff members, considering the amount of students whom scored less than 50% on the reading informational text portion of the reading test, as shown by the given data that we discussed here today. Now, there are many different types of graphic organizers, just like there are many different types of text structure. However, there are four specific types of graphic organizers that are the most common and that we will be focusing on today. These include hierarchical, sequential, conceptual, and cyclical. So, let's take a closer look at these four types and their characteristics. The first type is a hierarchical graphic organizer, which is used to present one main idea and the supporting details of said idea in ranking order. This type of organizer can be used to explore a subject with several ranks or levels, such as the branches of government. However, most people are most familiar with its most common form, the family tree. These types of graphic organizers help students to see the relationship between individual concepts and facts of one main idea, which helps them better understand the overall meaning of a piece of text. Here's a visual of what a hierarchical graphic organizer could look like. The main topic or idea is the largest piece at the top, with branching subcategories and the specific details of each of those subcategories below. A sequential graphic organizer is one that shows a series of events or steps to an activity in chronological order. This most often comes in the form of a timeline or the outline of a story plot. For example, When reading Red Riding Hood with students, or having them read it individually, students could fill out a sequential graphic organizers with key events in the story. Here's an example of a completed sequential graphic organizer. As you can see, this example takes the form of a series of steps to take to keep someone safe in the case of their clothing catching on fire. These types of organizers could have any number of boxes and/or steps. This type of organizer is often used for summarizing key events in any piece of text or as a how-to guide from any of the content areas. Conceptual graphic organizers are one of the two types that are most beneficial to elementary age students' learning. This graphic organizer is similar to the hierarchical graphic organizer in that they both display a single concept and supporting facts and/or characteristics of that main idea. However, the conceptual type of organizer differs from hierarchical because there is no ranking order. One idea is not more important than another. This type also shows relationships among facts or supporting characteristics and are all related to each other in some way. Here is one example of what this type of graphic organizer could look like. This is very visually similar to the hierarchical design, as you can see. However, another example of this type of graphic organizer could be a Venn diagram, which is used for compare and contrast concept. This will be a key design type due to the struggle students in the Apple Hill School District had with comparing and contrasting. Although these students' struggle was with comparing and contrasting two separate pieces of text from one another, this will still provide them with good practice with comparing and contrasting ideas from pieces of text. The final type of graphic organizer that is being focused on in this professional development session is a cyclical graphic organizer. This type is used to show information with no beginning or end, or that is circular. This is another example of a graphic organizer type especially suited for use with elementary students. This type of graphic organizer is primarily useful for showing cycles, such as life cycles. This type comes up most often in science lessons, such as for depicting the life cycle of a butterfly. By showing students how to visually depict the life cycle of an animal or any other kind of cycle, they will be able to better comprehend the main idea. The key to this strategy is to combine the use of text structure and graphic organizers into one complete strategy rather than two separate pieces. By teaching students when to use each of the four individual graphic organizer types, they will be more prepared to comprehend all pieces and types of text. For each smaller piece of text or individual paragraphs in a piece of text, students should be using a graphic organizer type that best depicts the main idea. The key to this strategy being successful is by teaching students what graphic organizer to use for different types of text or different main ideas. By teaching students what each of the graphic organizer types are used for, they should be able to determine which type would be best for the specific text structures. This will take a good amount of practice at first and will take up extra class time in order to help students get it right. However, as students continue practicing, they will eventually be able to automatically do this on their own without assistance from adults, which means it will be something they will be able to use when testing. There are multiple times a teacher could put this strategy to use in the classroom. The first and focus of this professional development is for any time following the reading of any type of informational text. This is the time that they will get to practice deciding the text structure and what graphic organizer is best for that specific structure. These graphic organizers could also be used to either gather student background knowledge or pre-assess them on the main idea of a lesson, or to test what they learned or took away from a lesson as a type of post-test. There are 6 steps to implementing this strategy successfully. The first 2 steps are to teach students to highlight the main ideas and underline key details within a short passage or individual chunks of text. By teaching them to do this, it is teaching them to pay attention to key ideas as they read, which in turn will improve their comprehension of the text. This will also assist them in completing the next step, which is teaching them to summarize the text. Their summary should be created by combining the main idea and key details into a single sentence. Next, after they finish reading the piece of text, students should be able to identify the text structure by reviewing how the ideas are organized. This is one of the most important steps to work on with students so that they will be able to one day implement this strategy on their own. Then, students should be taught how to organize the main ideas and key details they identified in the earlier steps by using a graphic organizer that best represents the given text structure. The final step is to teach students to write an informative or explanatory paragraph about what they read by using the same type of text structure. This step is completely optional and would be up to the discretion of the individual teacher on whether or not it is something that their students are capable of. This step would greatly summarize their learning and finalize their comprehension of the text. But, as I said, it is completely up to the teacher on their own students' abilities. As we've discussed, each of the elementary schools within this district are unique, which means that the needs of your individual schools are also unique. Let's take a look at each individual elementary school and how you can differentiate this strategy to meet your individual needs better. For Brayburn Elementary, if you think back to the data from the Ohio ELA test, you will remember that 92% of your third graders were at or above the proficient level. Because of this great score, I think that it will be important to take this strategy one step further. The way you implement this strategy should be just as we have described it today. Having students read a piece of informational text, determine the text structure being used, and then complete a graphic organizer based off of that text structure. However, if we look back at the 6 steps to implementing this strategy, you will remember that the 6th step that I said was optional and up to the teacher's discretion as to whether or not it is something your students can do. I think for Brayburn Elementary, this step should be the goal. This group of students should have practice with writing an informative or explanatory paragraph on the topic they are reading about in the same structure the text is written in. Not only will this provide them with an additional opportunity to practice identifying and becoming familiar with the different text structures, but it will also give them a challenge they may need to continue to push their abilities further. Next up, we have Cortland Elementary. I think for this school, it will be important to focus on the graphic organizer piece to this strategy. Now, this does not mean to forget about teaching them the different text structures. That is still an extremely important step. What I mean by focusing on the graphic organizers is to continually work with the different graphic organizer styles for all pieces of text and not just informational text. I think that this is a good differentiation for Portland because of the high number of students not at the proficient level. About 51% of students were only near or below the proficient level. Because of this, it's important to provide them with as much practice as possible using the graphic organizers in order to help them organize the main ideas and key details as they are reading any piece of text. Finally, Darcy Elementary had the largest percentage of students below proficient for reading informational text. This percentage makes me think that having students practice identifying text structures in their content area textbooks or any informational texts being read, and then using graphic organizers to organize their ideas in order to improve the comprehension in this area is important. Using this strategy all day long for any piece of text will ideally improve students' comprehension of all types of text, especially informational. Now that we have learned the two parts to this strategy and how to differentiate it for all three elementary schools in the Apple Hill School District, let's take a look at a third grade example. Take a moment to read this short passage. Now, after reading, what signal words are you seeing that give you a clue as to what the text structure of this text could be? Right. The biggest signal phrase that is in this piece of text to give you a hint as to what the text structure is the phrase had a negative effect on. After seeing this signal phrase, what is the structure? Right, cause and effect. This piece is discussing what the cause is of more jellyfish than normal washing up on the beach. So now that we have identified the text structure, it's time to pick out a graphic organizer type that would best organize the main idea of this passage. So, what graphic organizer type do you all think would be best for the cause and effect passage that we just read and took a close look at? For this piece of text, I think that the graphic organizer that would work best is the sequence style of graphic organizers. For cause and effect structures of text, the most important piece of information students should remember from the text is the cause and effect. So, sequencing the cause followed by the effect is a great way to show exactly what happened and to order the events from the piece of text. Now, does this mean that the sequence style of graphic organizer is the only correct answer for how to organize the cause and effect type of text? No. There are plenty of graphic organizer types as we talked about before. It depends on what will work best for your students, what they think will help them remember the information the best. To me, the sequence style is what would help me and other students I have worked for. But there are plenty of other styles, so there are plenty of other possible answers. So that is all that I have for you all today. So before we wrap up, does anyone have any additional questions about the strategy discussed today or about the different text structures and types of graphic organizers? Okay, then that is all I have for you. Thank you for being here with me today, and I hope that the strategy I have shown you will have immense benefits on your students for your individual elementary schools and the Apple Hill School District as a whole.